You ever stop and think about all the things you've forgotten? I mean, we spend so much of our lives trying to remember things, right? But it turns out forgetting isn't some failure of our minds. It's actually one of its most essential and maybe even its most brilliant features. So let's get into why.
Go on, try it right now. Think all the way back to your very first memory. What do you see? Maybe a flash of light, your grandmother's garden. Now, what about before that? It's nothing, right? Just a complete blank. A huge part of your life that you absolutely lived through, but is now just gone.
It's kind of like a lost country that we all came from but can never, ever go back to. And this isn't just some poetic idea. It's a fundamental truth about how we're built. We literally begin in forgetting.
So let's start right there, in that lost country of our first few years, and dig into this incredible mystery that scientists call infantile amnesia.
So the standard scientific explanation is actually pretty straightforward. When we're toddlers, our hippocampus, which is basically the brain's long-term memory filing system, is still under construction. Experiences are happening for sure, and they're vivid, but the brain just can't properly archive them yet, so they kind of just evaporate.
But what if this isn't a bug in the system? What if it's a feature? I mean, think about it. Forgetting those first few years frees us from carrying around the memory of every single moment of helplessness, every hour of just wordless confusion. It's like an original mercy, a gift that lets us start our own story a little way in, once we can actually walk and talk and start making some sense of the world. And that's the crucial point here, your sense of self, who you are. It doesn't start with your first memory. It actually emerges from this huge ocean of what's been forgotten. Everything you see about yourself depends entirely on what's submerged underneath.
Okay, but that's just the beginning. Even after our brains are fully developed, forgetting stays as this secret engine driving how we think, how we create, and, honestly, how we stay sane.
The writer Jorge Luis Borges came up with this character named Funes, who couldn't forget anything, and it completely destroyed him. He remembered every single leaf on every tree he'd ever seen, every crack in the sidewalk. He couldn't think, because to think, to form an idea about a tree, you have to forget the specifics of all the individual trees. A perfect memory isn't a superpower, it's a prison of useless detail.
This brings us to how our memory actually works, because it's not what you think. When you remember something, you're not just pulling up a video file. Your brain is actively rebuilding the story from all these scattered fragments. And here's the wild part. Every single time you tell that story, you change it just a little bit.
So let's be absolutely crystal clear about this. Your memory is not a video camera faithfully recording reality.
It is a story we tell ourselves about ourselves. It's much more like a personal mythology than it is a factual news report.
And this leads to a really wild paradox. The memories we rehearse the most, our favorite stories about ourselves, are often the least accurate. But they are the most useful for building a solid sense of who we are. Forgetting the tiny details lets us create the bigger meaning.
And this whole act of selective forgetting, it doesn't just shape us as individuals. It's also the secret ingredient in our relationships, our communities, and yeah, even our nations.
Think about resentment for a second. What is it, really? Well, it's a failure of forgetting. It's keeping this perfect, detailed ledger of every single wrong, every slight. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is like a strategic amnesia. It's not about pretending something didn't happen, but it is choosing to release its grip on the future. It's the kind of forgetting that allows love to survive.
And what's fascinating is that, on a much larger scale, nations do the exact same thing. Every single country is built on what you could call a useful amnesia. To create a heroic, unifying story, a national myth, certain inconvenient parts of history have to be strategically forgotten or at least pushed to the side. A nation can't really unite around its sins. It needs a story of its glory.
So if forgetting is this crucial, what would a world without it actually look like? Well, right now, we're kind of caught between two terrifying extremes.
On the one hand, you have the absolute horror of pathological forgetting, like what happens in Alzheimer's disease. The self just dissolves because there's no past to anchor it. It's a consciousness trapped in this eternal, unmoored present. And that shows us we can't exist without some memory.
But on the other hand, we have the opposite horror, the perfect, unforgiving memory of our digital lives. The internet is a machine that never forgets. Every embarrassing photo, every foolish comment, every past version of you is archived forever, searchable, and ready to be used against the person you are today.
A world that cannot forget is a world without second chances.
It's a world where growth is impossible because you're permanently held hostage by your past. It's a culture of permanent shame, where redemption becomes a forgotten idea because the mistake is never, ever erased from the server.
And that brings us to what might be the most crucial point of all. Forgetting wasn't a flaw. It was the invisible infrastructure for grace. It was the natural, organic process that allowed for forgiveness, for change, for starting over, both for ourselves and for each other.
We are now actively building a world without that infrastructure, a world of perfect memory and permanent records. So the question we really have to ask ourselves is this: if forgetting was what gave us the grace to change, to grow, and to forgive, who are we going to become without it?